Welcome to another episode of the Laser Bros podcast. I am your host, Logan Lazarchik, and today I will actually be doing this episode by myself. As some of you know, Luke is the sports editor for the K-State newspaper, and he is at Big 12 Media Day this week. So for this week's episode, I will be recording on my own, and today we will be talking about a handful of matchups of Week 6 from NFL this past week. And this past week in the NFL, the games were a bit subpar. There were only two games of the whole slate that hit the over on the point total. So just kind of a sluggish weekend in the NFL. Not many good games, not much clean football in general, but there were many storylines, especially from the NFC side of things, that we'll talk about today. And it was an interesting week because most of the teams that we think are Super Bowl teams really didn't play to that caliber and kind of played down to their competition. And, it was disappointing to see, those teams play like that. And coaching, execution, all those type of things were kind of subpar this weekend. So we'll start off with the NFC side of things today. And we'll be talking about the first game we'll touch base on is the Browns and the 49ers. The 49ers entered this game as 9.5-point favorites. Opened the week at 3.5-point favorites, but due to the Deshaun Watson shoulder injury and him being ruled out earlier in the week, the line jumped up to 9.5. And it was a game where I believe the 49ers jumped out to a pretty quick lead, and they held that lead for much of the first half. But in the second half, we kind of saw them sputter out. And what I want to talk about in this game is Brock Purdy and this 49ers offense. So in the first half, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey all went down with injuries. And while Trent Williams was able to return, the other two players were not able to. And those are significant players in this 49ers offense. And Brock Purdy was not sharp in this game. 12 of 27, 125 yards, one touchdown, one pick. And he was very underwhelming, struggled a lot, especially in the first half, even with Christian McCaffrey, even with Deebo Samuel. He just wasn't there. In the second half, once they were gone, you kind of saw those limitations that he has. And Brock Purdy, he's a good quarterback. He's definitely proven me wrong. I thought, he wasn't that good. But I do think at the same time, he is mostly a product of the system. Now, he's definitely an upgrade over Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't do the things that Brock Purdy has done. But I think Purdy is definitely limited with size, athletic ability, arm strength. And I think that's fully on display against a really good Cleveland Browns defense. And there was one point in the second half without Christian McCaffrey, without Deebo Samuel. Purdy was 1 of 7 for 1 yard. And so it was, I think, midway through the fourth quarter. That was his stat line for the second half. And I think he finished the second half with 53 yards passing. But something that I've always wanted to see from Purdy ever since he started these games, and he's been winning all these games up to this point before he lost on Sunday, was just adversity, play through some adversity. And we haven't seen much of that throughout the first 10 or 11 starts he's had. And weeks 1 through 5, he trailed 0 minutes and 0 seconds during week 1 through 5. And his pass yards per game in the second half were 112.2. He threw 3 touchdowns compared to 0 picks. His passer rating was 130.4. His yards per pass were 10.8, and his completion percentage was 76.9. Now, when you look at Sunday against the Browns and their loss, he had 53 yards in the second half, as I just mentioned a short while ago. He had 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. His passer rating was 16.8, and his yards per pass were 3.5 with a completion percentage of 33.3%. And in the second half of this game, he trailed 8 minutes and 41 seconds. So it's a small test, and it's only been one game, but you can kind of see when adversity hits, Brock Purdy did not elevate this team, and he did not elevate his play. And that's just the one thing I question about this 49ers team is, can Brock Purdy, when they're in a playoff game against a pass rusher like the Eagles, like the Lions, can he elevate the players around him and prove that he can make plays without having to depend on all these players? And we didn't see that on Sunday. We saw a play that struggled for the most part of the game. And what's interesting about this team is, so we saw Trent Williams go down, and he's clearly their best offensive lineman, probably the best left tackle in the league. He's 30. I want to say he's 38. I may be wrong on that, but he's definitely up there in age, mid to late 30s. And the 49ers had 3 picks in the 2023 draft, just 3 picks, and they were back-to-back-to-back picks in the 3rd round. And they did not elect to choose an offensive lineman. Instead, they chose a kicker, Jake Moody, in the 3rd round, and he missed the game-winning field goal, 41 yards. So, spending a 3rd-round pick on a kicker when you get an offensive lineman and an offensive line that needs help. I mean, other than Trent Williams, like I said, it's a very underwhelming offensive line. And you saw against an elite pass rush, they were not able to protect Brock Purdy. And Purdy needs that protection. He needs a clean pocket. He can make plays from time to time outside the pocket, but you need Purdy to be protected well in order for him to produce at a high level. So I think Sunday showed a lot of things about the 49ers that, we'll see if Debo and Christian McCaffrey will be able to play here in the coming weeks. I know it was reported that Debo is day-to-day with a shoulder injury, and Christian McCaffrey had an MRI on his oblique and his ribs yesterday. And head coach Kyle Shanahan is hopeful he plays week 7, but we'll have to see. It's a Monday night game against the Vikings. It may be in their best interest just to sit those 2 players out against an opponent that is not that good. So I think we could see Debo and McCaffrey both out week 7 against the Vikings on Monday Night Football, give them that extra rest, and we'll see how Purdy plays. I think he'll definitely play better on week 7 against a defense that is not as good as the Browns. And then for the Browns side of things, the AFC North is wide open. The Ravens are 4-2, Pittsburgh's 3-2, Browns are 3-2, and then Bengals are 3-3 going to their bye. It's a wide open division. I think if the Browns can find a way to open up their offense, wake this offense up, help Deshaun Watson just play competent football, I think this team has a great chance of winning this division. The division's wide open. I'm not a huge believer in the Steelers. Ravens, I think, we kind of see – I think Lamar has definitely improved in the pocket, but you see they give up these type of games. They gave up the game last week against the Steelers. They should have won, and this game against the Titans should have been a much larger margin than it was. They should have not won this game by 8 points. Dominated from the first snap to the last snap, but they only won by 8 points. And, in the NFL, when you leave opponents in the game and you get an opportunity to make a play, it could bite you in the end. So I think the Browns have a great opportunity. I think Deshaun Watson, hopefully he gets healthy here soon and we can see this offense play at full strength. But in whole, I think the Browns have, an opportunity to really take control of the division. And Bengals have a bye week this week, and the Browns play the Colts and the Ravens play the Lions. So it can definitely tighten up even more after week 7. So speaking of teams that allow their opponents to stick around, and in the end it cost them, the Eagles. The Eagles had full control against the Jets in this game, but they fell short 20-14. The Eagles were up 14-12 in the 4th quarter, and really, like I just said, had full control, shouldn't have lost this game. They played right into the Jets' hands. The Jets are a team that defensively, they struggle against the run. We saw that a couple weeks ago against the Chiefs when Pacheco ran for 115 yards. And the Eagles are one of the best running football teams in the league, and ignored that fact and went pass heavy. Now, Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed were both out of this contest with injuries, and maybe Nick Sirianni felt more inclined to throw the ball more. Jalen Hurts had 45 pass attempts, and they only ran the ball. They only gave DeAndre Swift the ball 10 times. Those 10 carries did turn to only 18 yards, but when you're facing a team like the Jets, their offense is shaky. We don't really know what Zach Wilson is. Well, we know what Zach Wilson is at this point, but you're playing as a weaker offense. You should run the ball, depend on your defense, and that's exactly what they didn't do on the last drive. 3rd and 8 near midfield. Jets were out of timeouts. I believe it was a 2-minute warning, so it was coming out of 2-minute warning, 3rd and 8. If you just run the ball, burn 40 seconds, pin the Jets deep, and force Zach Wilson to go, 60 70 yards to get in field goal range. And if they beat you, I would take that. But instead, they throw the ball, try to win the game, and Jalen Hurts throws a pick. And the Jets return it all the way to inside the Eagles' 15 or 10-yard line. And Eagles, I believe, just let Breece Hall just run in. I believe that they didn't want to have to burn their 2 timeouts and have less time to try and get field goal range. So I believe that they just let Breece Hall score to save time. And then Jalen Hurts, we're going to see if he can pull off a game-winning drive, and he didn't do it. And I think Jalen Hurts is an interesting quarterback because he was in the Super Bowl last year, played really well, got the huge contract. Shane Steichen leaves for the Colts head coach job, and we're kind of seeing Jalen Hurts regress. And Nick Sirianni, when he first got hired as the head coach of the Eagles, he was calling plays in his first year, and you saw the offense struggle, and they passed the ball a lot. The fans were booing because the team wasn't running the ball during that first year before he turned over the play calling to Shane Steichen. And that's what we saw on Sunday. We saw a team that was overly aggressive, and I think, they saw those 2 corners after the Jets, and they thought they could expose it. And A.J. Brown did his part. But Devontae Smith was pretty much quiet, pretty much shut down, non-existent in this contest. And the Eagles just didn't play to their strengths. Run the ball, play defense, especially against an offense that is not going to put up points in the Jets because Zach Wilson's limited and he's playing in a confined playbook, and they're not going to be overly aggressive because they don't want him to turn over the ball. And we saw that he was 19 of 33 for 186 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. That's exactly what the Jets want. As long as Zach Wilson doesn't turn over the ball, lean on the defense, lean on the run game, they have chances to win this game. Garrett Wilson had 8 catches for 90 yards, so he was also very good in this game. If you're the Eagles and you're playing a team like the Jets, you have to realize that they're not good against the run, and they have limited offense. So the Eagles had no excuse to really lose this game. They had control throughout, and they simply just gave up this game. And, them and the 49ers were the last undefeated teams, and now both of them fall. And Eagles, if they won this game, you're 6-0. And, the Cowboys, we'll talk about them later. They did win last night, so they're 4-2. You could still have a 2-game lead, but now you're 5-1. Cowboys 4-2. You never know how it happens. The schedule for the Eagles gets very rough coming up here. So on Sunday night, they host the Miami Dolphins, which, Miami's 5-1. They're putting up a lot of points, one of the most prolific offenses in the league. But when you look at the schedule, I'll pull it up here real quick. So they face Miami, then at Washington, then you have Dallas. Then you have the bye week. So I think you should go, I think you beat Washington easily. We'll see what happens with the Miami game. And I think you should beat Dallas at home. Dallas wasn't great last night, even though they came up with the win. But after that bye week, you're at Kansas City, versus Buffalo, versus San Francisco, at Dallas, at Seattle. Winning this game last week was going to be huge. If they were 6-0 after this week, that would give them an opportunity not to coast, but just keep playing football, not have a lot of pressure on them. But now that you're 5-1 and you have these formidable opponents coming up, you can't really have a slip up, and that's exactly what happened. And now the thing is, I think Kansas City, tough game. Kansas City's defense has really improved. Buffalo, we'll talk about them here shortly as well. After the first 4 weeks, hasn't really looked that sharp, especially offensively. San Francisco will have to see with injuries, but I think they'll be healthy by then. And then Dallas at home is always a tough defense to play against. And Seattle at home is also a tough team to play against on the road. So, this week was definitely a slip up and definitely a lost opportunity for the Eagles. But the Jets side of things, they're 3-3 going to their bye. Most people said if they went 2-4, that's probably their best case scenario with Aaron Rodgers. But now they're 3-3 without him. And this is a team that can definitely push for a wild card spot in the AFC, especially how the AFC is kind of playing out. Most teams are not really playing that well. And the Chiefs are 5-1, Dolphins are 5-1, but Dolphins have a very weak defense. Chiefs, we don't know what their offense is exactly outside Mahomes, Kelsey, and Pacheco, you could say, with the running game. So AFC is kind of wide open. I do think Jets have an opportunity to, get a wildcard spot, and their schedule lines up a lot. The first 6 weeks was the most grueling part of their schedule. So the thought process was if they could get through that part of the schedule, be 2-4, 3-3, they can definitely have an opportunity to string off some wins. So I think the Jets, it's a great win for them. Of course, you're beating a team like the Eagles, who were in the Super Bowl last year, and Robert Saleh and his defense, they're proving that they are one of the elite groups. And, I'm a proponent of hiring offensive minds as your head coach. But if you hire a defensive guy, they better master that side of the ball. And that's exactly what Robert Saleh is. He's a defensive guy, and that defense is one of the top defenses in the league. So, although I'm not a huge let's hire a defensive coach, if he can get that side of the ball right and hire good offensive coaches to head that offense, I think it's a great formula. So I think the Jets have their head coach in place, and I think as long as Zach Wilson keeps taking care of the ball and playing competent quarterback, I think this team can win. I don't know how sustainable it is relying on your defense week in and week out in the NFL, but for the Jets, it's working, and I think it should continue to work at least these next few weeks. Next game, another NFC game, and this team, we've always talked about the 49ers and the Eagles as the top two teams in the NFC and being a two-horse race. But the Lions are entering the conversation of, is this a real Super Bowl contender? And I think they are. They defeated the Buccaneers 20-6, shut down Baker Mayfield and his offense that was humming before the bye week. And on last week's episode, when we were making our predictions, I did mention to Luke that I think the Buccaneers do come down to earth starting this week. And that's kind of what we saw. We saw Baker Mayfield kind of struggle, miss some open passes, especially at the end of the game. But the Lions' defense is legit. You can't run on them, so you have to throw on them. And they are giving up some yards to the air, but in the NFL nowadays, you're going to give up yards to the air because of the rules and how offense is being judged by the officials. So I thought the Lions played a great game. David Montgomery's injury may impact the team greatly. I mean, he's been a great running back, great addition to this team in the offseason from the Bears. But now we'll probably see Jahmyr Gibbs now that David Montgomery is likely to miss some time with a rib injury. I believe it's a cartilage injury, which those can, linger and be very painful for quite a few weeks. So hopefully Jahmyr Gibbs gets his opportunity now because, they used a top 12 pick on him in the draft. And running backs have been devalued lately. And spending a first-round pick, especially that high of a first-round pick on a running back, you would like to see the team utilize his skill set. So starting this week against the Ravens, we should see more of Jahmyr Gibbs coming off a hamstring injury, and those can also linger. So we'll see how big his workload is. But I think, the Lions, I think from roster, you can compare their rosters to the 49ers and the Eagles. I think from top to bottom, those are probably the top three, or their Eagles and 49ers definitely have the top two rosters as a whole built in the NFL. But when you look at the Lions, good pass rush, you've got a good run game, really good offensive line. Receivers, I would like to see them try and improve in the trade deadline. Amon-Ra kind of dominated this game. He had 124 yards and a touchdown. And I believe Jameson Williams was the next highest targeted receiver. I'll take a look real quick here. I believe he had around 3 to 4 targets in this game. I'll find it real quick. Yeah, Jameson Williams he was the next highest. Laporta had 11 targets, excuse me. But Jameson Williams was the next highest receiver with 53 yards, and those only came on 2 receptions, and one of them was a 45-yard touchdown. So I would like to see the Lions maybe make a move at the trade deadline, try to get a receiver. And the receiver market's kind of dry right now in the trade market. You have Jerry Jeudy, who I think would be a great addition. Mike Evans, I thought would be, a trade piece that the Bucs could move, but they're 3-2 in a very winnable division. So I don't know if they'll be willing to part ways with him, even though he's on last year's contract. But I think as a whole, offensive line, defensive line, secondary solid, even though they have some injuries in the secondary. You have Laporta, a very good tight end in his rookie season, dominating. I think the Lions are built to last the whole season, and I think it's very sustainable how they're playing. It'll be interesting to see how his offense is affected by David Montgomery's injury. But, they have Ravens, Raiders, bye week, Chargers, Bears. I think all winnable games. And I think they should beat the Raiders. They should beat the Bears. I think they do beat the Chargers. Chargers play sloppy football. Brandon Staley, I think he's over his head. And then Baltimore, they keep teams in games. So we'll see how that game plays out. I think very interesting game in week 7. But I think the Lions are for real. I think they're definitely a top top 2 team in the NFC. And with injuries to the 49ers, who knows? The Lions could find a way to, find themselves in a championship game or something down the road. So very good team. And I think the way they've built their team, the way they've constructed their team, I definitely think it's sustainable. Next game, primetime games have been pretty bad this year. And Sunday night was another one that was underwhelming, to say the least. Bills beat the Giants 14-9 in a game where the Giants were up 6-0 entering the fourth quarter. And the Giants were without Daniel Jones. And as much as I don't think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback, he's definitely better than Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor played a sound game. 0 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. Just take care of the football. Lean on Saquon Barkley, who had 24 carries for 93 yards, and try to win this game. And for the second straight week, the Bills had 7 points with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Something that, after the first 4 weeks, it was like this offense, I think, turned the corner. They're going to be more consistent this year. And it's just right back to where it was the last few years, where they play really well in September. And then after that, they kind of derail, kind of regress. And that's what we're seeing. And this offense is still so heavily relied on Josh Allen. And I thought that they figured out the run game. James Cook did have 14 carries for 71 yards, but in the first half, they didn't run the ball enough. And they turned to the run game in the second half, something that they should have done the entire first half. And passing game-wise, it's Stephon Diggs or nothing. Gabe Davis is catching touchdowns this year, but he's getting minimal targets because he does not create separation, and he's only a downfield guy. So Josh Allen completed 19 passes on 30 attempts. 16 of those targets went to Diggs, and 10 of those catches went to Diggs for 100 yards. It's very Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs-centric. You have a talented running back in James Cook, but defensive injuries, I'm not a huge fan of their offensive line. I don't know what to make of Buffalo. I think when they're playing at their best, I don't know. There's only a few teams, maybe 1 or 2 teams that can beat them when they're playing their best. But too often, they're playing down to their competition. So I don't know. I don't think it's a team that you can trust in the playoffs. I don't think they win the Super Bowl this year. I just don't think they're consistent enough. I think the injuries on the defense side of the ball are going to come back to haunt them. And, you lose Tre'Davious White for the year with the torn Achilles. Elam, the corner that they drafted last year in the first round, it's been a bust, has not been good at all. You lose a key linebacker, key pass rusher in the defensive line. I don't know. I think if you're a Bills fan, you have to be pretty upset at how this team's playing right now. I mean, the first 4 weeks were great, but after that, it's the same thing over and over again. And this game came down to coaching in the end. So I was fine. So 3rd and 8, I was fine with Josh Allen throwing the ball, trying to win the game. But he short arms it to Dawson Knox, who has to make a diving catch. It's probably a pass that Dawson Knox should catch and could catch, but Josh Allen could have made it much easier on his tight end. So, and then after that, instead of punting the ball, which I would have done, I would have punted because the Giants had to score a touchdown regardless. So if you took a field goal, and they took a field goal from the 36-yard line, it was a 53-yard attempt. So if you miss it, the Giants get the ball on the 43, and they did miss it. Instead of punting the ball to the Giants, who have 1 timeout left, make Giants go the whole length of the field. They missed the field goal, and Giants started the ball at the 43. And this game came down to a play on the goal line where I believe Darren Waller was interfered with for the second consecutive play, but they didn't call it. And you're not going to see refs make that type of call on consecutive plays. They're going to let him play on the last play. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but the Giants did have a play on the 1-yard line to close out the first half with 0 timeouts, and Tyrod Taylor checked out of the play to a run play, and they didn't get it. And the clock ran out, and they didn't get any points on the board. Could have been up 9-0, could have been up 13-0. Instead, they're up 6-0 at half. So it's those type of little things, that cost teams NFL football games, and we saw that this week. And, the Bills, I think, were very lucky to win this game. I don't think either team deserved to win this game, but the fact that the Bills, they were 15.5-point favorites going into this game, and if they want to be a team that wins the Super Bowl, they have to be more consistent than what they're playing. And they're playing consistently bad the last couple weeks, so they have to be they have to get his offense going, and I don't know what they possibly do at the trade deadline. You have a lot of resources already thrown into the season, a lot of money paid to Diggs, Josh Allen coming up. I don't know. I feel like it's really a win now window for the next 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and I don't think they. I don't know. They the way the Chiefs are building their team, they're drafting and they're hitting their draft picks. Bills are going all in for right now, throwing money at key position players, star players like Von Miller. But Von Miller, I don't know how many good years he has left. Stephon Diggs is 29. Josh Allen, the way he plays, I don't know how long his prime's going to be. I'm not saying that he's going to fall off a cliff here anytime soon, but when you play that physical, you run the ball a lot, you take hits. I don't know how long his prime's going to be. And their Super Bowl window, I think, is much shorter than people realize. I think it's this year, next year, and maybe possibly next year, the following year, and then I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a 3-year window, and I don't know the way the other teams are building their rosters in the AFC. I don't know if the Bills really. I don't know. It's just Sean McDermott. I'm not a huge fan of. Some of his decision making, his coach's decision making is questionable. I'm not a huge fan of their offense coordinator. I think their team is dependent on like Josh Allen, Diggs, Von Miller. It's dependent on a few star players, and I don't know. I think injuries have caught up to them this year, and I don't know. I just don't know what this team's going to look like by the time it's December, January. Tough division. I don't even know if they win their own division. Miami's playing really good football. We'll see if Miami's style of play is sustainable. Warm weather. Once it gets cold, I'm not sure how Tua is going to play. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, so when it starts getting cold, will they be still able to throw the ball down the field? Tyreek Hill's averaging, I think, north of 20 yards per catch. Already has 800-something yards on the year. Is on his pace for 2,300 yards. So we'll see if it's sustainable. Miami's defense isn't that great, but right now I don't have a lot of optimism around the Bills. And as a Chiefs fan, that's good news, I guess. But, as a total NFL fan, the Bills, the AFC's kind of outside of the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are going to be there. It's kind of wide open on what happens. Chiefs aren't even playing that great, so AFC as a whole is wide open. But you have to trust the Chiefs that they will be there in the end. It'll come down to, is it the Bills? Is it the Bengals if they figure things out? Is it the Ravens? Will one of these teams step up with consistency? So Bills, I don't know. If you're a fan of the Bills, I don't know how to feel this morning or this afternoon or after this week. Last game of the week that I'm going to talk about is the Cowboys and the Chargers, which was last night. Very sloppy game, very choppy game, not a lot of rhythm. Penalties, I think, hindered both teams from sustained drives, consistently putting both teams behind the sticks. And both these teams feel like they're the same team. Bad coaches, situationally not great, dependent on key players instead of scheme and, execution. And the Cowboys were able to find a way to win. I think their defensive line played a key part in the outcome of this game. I think they dominated the Chargers up front. You saw Justin Herbert. Herbert is usually a very accurate quarterback. He's completing, I think, 71% of his passes this year. He completed under 60% of his passes last night. 2 touchdowns, 1 in. I don't know. The Chargers feel like another team that Herbert has to bail them out, and we have not seen him lead a game-winning drive. He's made a few plays here and there where very good, and I'm a big Justin Herbert fan. I believe in Justin Herbert, but last night was not a great game for Herbert, and Dak Prescott thoroughly outplayed Herbert, completing 21 of 30 passes, 272 yards, and a touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. And I thought, Brandon Staley, I don't know. He's a defensive guy. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, if you're going to hire a defense coach, they better be good on that side of the ball. And the Chargers are just one of the worst defenses in the league. Situationally, third downs, they give up tons of third downs, blown coverages. Joey Bosa is, I don't know where he doesn't do anything. He does not do anything. He's paid as a premier pass rusher, which he was when he got the contract, and I think he's completely fallen off with injuries. I don't know. The Chargers, it just feels like the same old Chargers. And last week when we picked this game, I picked the Chargers because I thought better quarterback. Didn't really love the way Cowboys been playing. I didn't think Cowboys even played that well last night. I think both teams played pretty bad. I think Cowboys defense just found a way to win this game, and I think they dominate up front. And I think Herbert, he has a fractured finger on his left hand. Can't really take snaps under center. And I think the main reason the Chargers struggled in this game was that they weren't able to establish the run. Eckler had 14 carries for 27 yards. The Cowboys defense dominated up front, and you saw tons of penalties on the Chargers offensive line. And even though Cowboys had 11 penalties themselves for 85 yards, Chargers had 9 penalties for 79 yards. And, Justin Herbert was only sacked one time, but it came at the most crucial time before his interception that closed out the game. And I don't know. It's the Chargers. They face the Chiefs this week. This felt like a must-win for both teams, especially the Chargers, because you are facing the Chiefs at Arrowhead this upcoming week. The Chiefs kind of have a mini bye because they play Thursday, so now they have 10 days to prepare for the Chargers. Meanwhile, the Chargers played on Monday. Short week. Take a flight to Kansas City. I think Chiefs win that game, so a very big missed opportunity for the Chargers to win this game before going to Kansas City. Instead of being 3-3, they're now, 3-2. They are now 2-3. Probably going to lose to the Chiefs. And then you have the Bears, Jets. I think you beat the Bears easily, but the Jets, at New York, Monday night, very good defense. I don't know how that plays out. Jets they did pick up another injury on offensive line, so Chargers, I think, should be able to win the game, but who knows? It's the Chargers. I don't know. I think Cowboys and Chargers are both teams. You can't trust them. I don't think they're – Cowboys are probably a playoff team. NFC's weak. They're 4-2. I don't know if the Chargers are a playoff team anymore. If you're 2-4 after week 7, you got to start winning games. And Brandon Staley, I don't know how this guy kept his job after last year's playoff blunder, blowing a 27-point lead. If they don't make the playoffs this year, he's definitely fired. And even if he makes the playoffs this year, he should be fired. But I don't know if the owners will fire him. Spanos family they don't spend their money. Brandon Staley was a cheap hire. I don't know. They may keep him. But the Chargers have a lot of question marks going forward. And outside of Keenan Allen, Joshua Palmer, very good last night. I thought he stepped up. But Quinn Johnson, they spent a first-round pick on him. And for the second straight game, without Mike Williams there because of a torn ACL, he's been shut out. 0 catches, only 2 targets last night. Chargers have a big problem, and I think there's only so much that Justin Herbert can do with this subpar coaching. I think the weapons, Keenan Allen, Eckler, I think are very good. Offensive line just didn't play well last night, and maybe that's because of the Dallas' pass rush. But, Chargers need to figure some things out. So, disappointing loss for them on Monday night. Short week to Kansas City. Cowboys going to the bye week at 4-2 instead of 3-3. So, that was a huge win for them. And then they face the Rams and the Eagles, I believe, out of the bye. And Rams are in Dallas, so Dallas defense is very fast on their turf and on turf in general. So I think Dallas should find a way to win that game, dominate the Rams offensive line. So it'll be interesting. Week 6 was, as I said before, pretty disappointing. There were games like the Bengals in Seattle, pretty bad. It was only 17-13 Bengals, and that was a game where I was expecting a shootout. Last night's game early on felt like a shootout. And never materialized. They just turned to penalties and just poor execution. So, yeah, week 6, hopefully week 7's better. And hopefully, we get some good football this upcoming week. Luke will be back next week for our next podcast. We'll probably do week 7 reactions, look ahead to week 8, and some other topics. But that will do for the episode this week. We appreciate if you subscribe and like the video.